We are live. Good to see you today, my EOS Podcast friends. Today we have Roshan from EOS Authority. He's going to tell us about some of the BPs starting to go green and also whatever's most exciting going on in EOS. So welcome to the show and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, Brandon. Thanks for having us on this your channel. That's great. So EOS Authority is a block producer. We've been a block producer right from the beginning. We are on the top 21 right from the start of the mainnet. So we've been producing blocks ever since. We're one of the BPs that have the highest community vote by the number of voters, and also we produce the most blocks on the mainnet so far. So yeah, these are just general intro on the EOS Authority.
Yeah, that's so you currently have the most voters out, like as far as individuals go right now?
Exactly. So if you look at the number of unique voters, we have something like 20,600, something like that, unique voters. So that puts us quite a distance from the number two. Yeah. So we are number one from the beginning, quite from the beginning.
Cool. That's a pretty good metric to have. What do you think set you guys apart to get that metric?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think what I think happened was we had this like a registration check system. So pretty much, I think like every month towards the launch date, we had like 1 million page views on our site. I'm pretty sure that almost anybody who has purchased the ERC20 EOS tokens went through our site at some point to check if their registration is all set up properly. Oh. So I think that got a lot of awareness out there, and then we had a lot of relevant tools and stuff. So I think that's one of the big reasons why people know us.
Yeah, that's that makes a lot of sense, and that's kind of a testament to that's what BPs are supposed to do: build tools that are so useful that they get votes from them. That's one of the ways to add value. So cool to see that work like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that's really nice to see, and we've been maintaining that right from the start. So yeah, we are very, very proud to have that. Yes.
Yeah. So what in general with EOS right now, what's the most exciting thing to you that's going on?
Yeah. So from the white paper, the whole point was we have all these unique features. It was just good to see them all getting delivered as expected. So we have all the free transactions. We have 21 BPs around the world doing also pretty much everything. The next big things are obviously the rest of the things in the paper, like getting the referendum system. So Roshan, my colleague, and his team, we are all working on getting a referendum system. A lot of work has been done by other BPs. We're working on a UI for it. So these are all things: referendum system, getting the Rex system set up. All these are the short-term things that we're looking at.
Yeah, and it looks like the referendum system is one of the things that's going to have a huge impact on EOS, the whole EOS.io chain. How far along is that? Where are we at on the referendum right now?
Yeah, the referendum is something I would have expected to have yesterday, but it's been going on so long. I mean, so as you know, like we expect things to happen very quickly in the in the short term, but in the long, all this normal stuff. But I think on the referendum system, we are making good progress. I think a lot of EOS Nation is doing a lot of work on it, and I think over the last 3 months, we have made like good progress on it. I would say that in the next 2 weeks, we should have the referendum system. I don't want to give dates and numbers, but I would expect that the next 2 weeks, so by Christmas, we should definitely have the referendum system on the mainnet.
Yeah, that's exciting. I know there's a lot of kind of the next projects that are waiting on the referendum system so that they can be implemented. They need to be voted in. Basically, I think the Rex is actually a good example. The Rex needs to be voted in with the referendum system. Is that right?
Exactly. So the Rex has two parts to it. So part one is the normal Rex system where you actually get to rent EOS and stuff like that. And the other part of Rex is where you take out these funds that are set in the EOS.io RAM trading fee and in the name auction. So we weren't sure if that has to be rolled up into a single update. So the plan now is we might roll out Rex just without touching the system funds like the name auctions and the RAM fee, and then turn on the switch later when the referendum is passed through. So yeah, it might be a two-part implementation. So part one is we do it without touching system funds, but we have the Rex model. Part two, we'll have the after referendum, we'll have that. And then thing with referendum is once you have something on the referendum, it takes like 4 months to get ratified and to get it confirmed. So Rex might be a two-part kind of implementation.
Okay, that makes sense. And basically it's that if you're going to move the system funds or do something with those system funds, it needs to be voted in by referendum. So it's not necessarily the Rex it's the holdup. It's the moving of funds, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So I think doing it as two-part thing makes it sure that we could get the Rex features quickly, and then we can wait on getting the system funds later after referendum. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And then what's that 4 month? You said it takes about 4 months to implement. How's that work? What's the process there?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think good you mentioned that. So with referendum, once a referendum comes online, you can't just approve it within, let's say, you have something like it has to have a yes to a no ratio of a certain point, and that point has to be maintained for 30 days over a 3-month window. So these kind of metrics make sure that even the simplest referendum, so let's say there is a simple referendum, which is a no-brainer, everybody wants to vote yes, you still have a minimum time span to hold this on. So that is where this 3 months come in.
Okay, so it's basically like a voting window of 3 months where you make sure that everyone's heard about it and had a chance to vote. And even you can go in and change your vote along that way. Let's say I vote yes, and then I can go change it to no.
Yeah, exactly. You can say yes, and then you say, okay, I changed my mind now. I'm convinced that no is the way. And then you change your mind, and then that yes to no 10% difference should stay for a duration of a month or something. So there is a window where this has to stay yes versus no has to be higher than a certain threshold. So all these kind of things play in, and then that's.
Oh, so it needs to be, okay, interesting. So it needs to get over a certain threshold, then stay a yes vote for a certain amount of time without going back and forth. It has
going back. Exactly. So all these things add up, and the simplest referendum is likely to take at least 2-3 months to get through.
Very interesting. What's the threshold that it needs to get over before the yes or no vote actually counts?
Yeah, so my colleague Roshan is working with the referendum system. He knows the details, but I think it's something like 10%. The yes to no, either of them has to be about 10% for about a period of a month or something.
Okay. Wow. Cool. I didn't know any of that about the referendums. That's why I do the podcast, is because I'm always, there's so much to learn. It's kind of,
so much to learn, and things keep changing every day too. So
yeah. I know, and it's good you can change your vote too, because I'm constantly changing my ideas on what I think is right for EOS. It's like it's every day. So, cool. So what else are you guys up to at EOS Authority? I know that you have some interesting things on the roadmap. You talked about going green and having a zero carbon footprint. Can you talk about that program, what that is?
Yes, perfect. So let me just pull up the site. So this is one of our recently launched initiatives. So what happened was we launched a community initiative, which essentially trying to make EOS the world's first carbon neutral blockchain. So we worked with a leading company in carbon credits in the UK called Climate Care. We approached them back in September and told them, hey, we have this EOS chain. It is not like your typical Bitcoin or Ethereum chain, which does proof of work. We are much more efficient. We are a generation 3 chain. We gave them all relevant data, like this is what we estimate a server to take. These many servers are required by a normal BP to run the operations. So taking all this into consideration, we worked out that each BP emits something. Let me just pull up the exact numbers to be sure. So we calculated something like each BP. Let me get it there. So each BP has, so total chain, if you take the whole, so we assume that block producer number 1 has X amount of servers, and we assume that all the top 80 BPs have the same number of servers. So, and then we multiply the emission of the top BP into 80, and we get a total of 562 tons that have to be offset by 80 BPs. And we worked out the cost to be something like 16 EOS per BP. And so that was the whole calculation. So we worked out with Climate Care, and we got the calculation, and then Climate Care worked out the details and told us corresponding projects that we can buy carbon credits from. So when we get the both together, EOS becomes a carbon neutral blockchain. So yeah, and what is good is today we managed to get all the funding secure. We had amazing participation from a lot of BPs, and we managed to close that project and we announced that EOS Authority. EOS is carbon neutral blockchain, which is amazing.
So EOS Authority led this initiative, but this is an initiative for the entire EOS blockchain to be carbon neutral, not just your block producers. That's right.
Exactly. So the entire blockchain is now carbon neutral. So all the 80 BPs, and we even had a few BPs below the rank 80 that voluntarily contributed to help, to get to the target sooner. So it was really good to see, and we had like lots of participation. I was like really surprised. When we started the project, we were like, hey, maybe we'll have something like 20, 30, 40% of the BPs pay. Because each time we go through the system upgrade contract and stuff, just upgrading the system requires 15 of the top 21 BPs to sign. Just getting all the relevant signatures is a job, and it takes a while. So we weren't expecting a lot of turnout, but we were very happy to see that this initiative was really taken up by a lot of BPs, and we had a lot of BPs, or pretty much everybody except a few BPs that we could never even contact. Nobody knows the contact details for some of the BPs. So yeah, just those that we missed. Apart from that, everybody is paid, which is really cool.
That is really cool. That's a great initiative. How many servers does like a top 21 BP run? What's that look like?
Good. That's a good question. So again, what happens is everybody needs one server, which is a producer server. That's where the producer happens. And most likely, so we'll start off from the center. So you have a producer server, which everybody needs. Then you can't just run on one producer. You need like a standby in case of emergencies to switch over to a failover. And then you need a server which does you need to send your blocks to the other BPs. So you have what I call seed nodes. So the seed nodes connect to your producer and connect to the rest of the world. So typical BPs might have like 2 or 3 different seed nodes. So you have like 4 servers so far. Then you need like a backup for all those, maybe 5. And then you need something called an API service. This is where wallets like different wallets like Scatter and so on, they have to connect to the EOS network. So all the BPs run something called an API service. So they might have around 2 to 3 API service. So all in all, I would say around 8, maximum at the most 10 servers are what 10 is like really really covering.
Wow, that's a lot of infrastructure going on there. Again, not something I was familiar with. That's something that that our tech guy works on. So cool.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. You could have, BPs could have lower number of servers. I would just say around 6 to 8 is like recommended, and 10 is like really high end, really pushing the limits.
Where do you see that? I know that you use the top 21 to make sure you had a really conservative number, but where do you see, like, let's say in the 50 ranks BPs, what type of infrastructure you see them running usually?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, so theoretically, all the BPs are supposed to run the same hardware so they can be switched in and out at any time. And practically, we haven't seen BPs that are below, let's say, 35 ever jump into like a 21 overnight. So looking at practically, I would say that I think again, going back to my earlier example, the standby BPs might do the from the core out. So they all have a producer. They might, instead of having a standby, they might say, I'll have a producer and just an API node, and that's it. They might just go in for 2 servers. And once they get into production, they might change things around, or as they're getting closer to the top, they might start adding in more servers and so on. So I would say standbys below rank 50 might be able to just get away with a couple of servers.
And what's the cost to BPs to do something like that? So let's say an under 50 is running just 2 servers versus the cost of running 8 to 10 servers at the max. What's the price disparity there?
Yeah, good. So I think it depends again. So there are some BPs that purchase their hardware and they run it on like physical servers. There are BPs that run on the, say, Google Cloud or Amazon or Alibaba Cloud and so on. So let's just go with cloud, for example, because cloud, you can just switch on and off the service. So a top 21 BP might spend something like $8,000 a month or something like that on their servers. Below 50, you might be able to just do something for like $2,000 a month, something like that.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Well, that's it's always interesting to hear about the BP costs because I know there's discussion around how much the BPs make, where that's being spent. So it's good for people to realize that there are some pretty substantial infrastructure costs that go into running block producers. So
Yeah, I
um,
mean, this is way less compared to Bitcoin and Ethereum. That's the whole idea with the green, but still there are costs run the EOS node.
yeah, absolutely. So aside from the carbon neutral footprint, well, actually, I have a couple more questions on the carbon neutral footprint. What so essentially, it sounds like the program is taking the footprint that the blockchain has and then purchasing carbon credits to offset that so that it runs carbon neutral. What are the were there any sort of specific companies that you look to purchase carbon credits for? What's kind of what that end of it look like?
Yeah, perfect. So we have around so the climate care calculated that we have 562 tons of total CO2 emissions per year. And what happens is they gave us like a basket of projects that are carbon positive. So what happens is, for example, there is a project called Life Straw. So this is like the filtered. I don't know. Have you used the Life
I
Straw?
have one. Yeah, I use it.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what happens with the Life Straw project in Kenya is instead of boiling water and things, they have given out some. Let me look at the website. Some 877,000 families use Life Straw. So what they do is they give out live straws and they calculate how much of emissions were saved as opposed to like CO2 for boiling water and so on. So they have alternative things. They have live straw projects. Let me pick up a few, or even say a few reforestation projects. So they have like this much reforestation has cost this much CO2 to be absorbed and so on. So you take out the credits from there, or it's like a wind farm project and so on. So these are the alternate energies that are green that are being implemented here. So the contribution that we make helps climate care fund these projects and so on. So that is how the system becomes carbon neutral.
Okay, that's cool. So it's just to get a clear picture, you have the life straw, for example, or deforestation that's adding or basically removing in some way carbon from the environment or adding a positive green impact, and there's funds that go to them. I mean, they're basically the ones on the other end selling the carbon credits because they're carbon positive or
positive. Exactly. So exactly. So exactly. So I think you explained it pretty well. So 562 tons is sent out to the atmosphere from block production, and these projects take back these 562 tons out of the atmosphere. So at the end of the day, EOS is carbon neutral. Exactly.
Wonderful.
And we've gone pretty conservative, as you know. Like we've taken the emissions of the top 21 and multiplied by the full 80. Mm-hmm. So I mean, in all intents and purposes, like I'm sure we are like carbon negative or something. We're already carbon negative. But I would like to say carbon neutral just to be completely sure that, yeah.
Yeah, carbon neutral. That's definitely a safe call. But that's great. It's better to err on the side of doing more than not doing quite enough and having to worry about it for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And this is like, and we're comparing with, say, when you compare with Bitcoin and Ethereum, you can't even just compare the same transaction. So we are having way more transactions than them. So it's not even a like for like comparison, but still, yes. Yeah, it's a pretty big achievement. And imagine doing the same offset for Bitcoin. It'll run into like $1 billion a year or something.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. Are there any other parts of that initiative that we haven't really hit on?
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well. And just one more thing to hit up on is we need to do this every year.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, this offset 562 tons is just for 1 year. And what we'll do is later next year, we will towards the, so we covered from June when the chain launched to June next year, and towards like May or something next year, we'll look at what resources have changed, what is the server configuration requirements look like, and then we'll probably have to start the campaign again. So that's it. So we got to do this every year. So
good. Well, as the chain grows and as it scales and as BPs need more servers, et cetera, then that calculation will change.
Yes, that calculation will change. But I'm sure EOS is pretty efficient, and we can make better utilization of our servers and infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. What other things does EOS Authority have on the roadmap, or what are you working on currently?
Yeah, so currently, big thing is for us to get the referendum system. So Rohan and the team is building a UI for it. So we have all sorts of charts to see if how a particular what the whales are voting for on the referendum, what the majority of the users are voting for, and what are the change pattern over time. And we're trying to build up all these kind of features that are, make a truly amazing referendum. So that's where our focus is at the moment.
Great. Well, I mean, you can only do so much. I think building out the referendum system and making EOS carbon green carbon neutral at the moment is, it's like two pretty big time projects. So in kind of more current events here, we got Dan's been talking in the Telegram channel recently. Are you familiar with or have you seen any of his recent statements? Do you have any kind of interesting ideas from that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things. Are you talking about the new coin thing, or?
Yeah, we've got shower coin, which it's been infamously termed. We've got the CPU kind of change fix that he's got. Yeah,
perfect. So the shower coin, I mean, again, it's yet another group that I've joined in. I'm interested to see how that discussion go. But I think shower coin is like really early. It's just something that Dan is in constant communication with the community, and he just wanted to throw an idea out there. It's interesting to see the concept, but we don't have details of how he's doing the technical thing. So it's a bit too early to comment on it. But yeah, I mean, just like every other, Dan did mention that he is staying with EOS and his focus is with project and so on. So that's good. Apart from that, we don't have the details to comment on the coins particularly yet. So that's too early. And on the CPU is a very important topic at the moment. So the entire EOS mainnet is a single-threaded application at the moment. So where single-threaded is like a single lane on a highway of cars or something like that. So you have a very fast lane, but it's single-threaded, which means that you can only go so fast. And that is where our maximum transactions are. And EOS has something called a congestion mode. I don't know how familiar you are with it. So what happens is, when you have, let's say, if a user has 10% of the EOS tokens, and if they have staked it, they are entitled to 10% of the resources of the network, which means that that's a guaranteed minimum. But what happens is, this is only enforced when there is a congestion mode. So what happens is, if I have just one EOS normally and the network is operating smoothly, I'll be able to do more than what is allocated for my one EOS. But when it hits the congestion mode, that is when the transactions are going really high, it hits into this congestion mode, and then it enforces the percentage of allocation that you have. So if you have 1%, you only allocated the 1% of the CPU user. So a lot of users would be like, hey, I had 10 EOS yesterday, and I could play this game 100 times, but today I can only play like 5 times. So this is what happens. The CPU is not it's not very easy to understand. So these things cause a lot of issues. There are upcoming updates to make it multi-threaded. So you have like multiple highways kind of thing, multiple lanes on the highway, or you have side chains. So the only way to solve the CPU in the long term is to have side chains. Block One has made massive updates. So each time they made pretty good updates, which really double the amount of CPU capacity. So all that is good, but then long term, we really need IBC, which is inter-blockchain communication with multiple side chains. That is the only long-term solution for CPU.
That is, do you have any information on where IBC is? I haven't heard anything real solid. It sounds like it's still in the almost conceptual phases. Where do you know where we are on that?
Yeah, I spoke to a few Block One employees back in the hackathon in San Francisco, and they were like, IBC it is quite lower in the list of their list of priorities. So you're right. It is in the very early stages, is what I would assume. It might take almost. I wouldn't be surprised if it takes 7-8 months to get the first IBC. But it's nothing stopping side chains from getting started at the moment. Anyway, we'll have a lot of side chains, and once they all upgrade to a compatible version of smart contract, we should be able to talk to each other. So it's not stopping side chains yet, because anybody can today spin up an EOS network and make a side chain. So nothing is stopping creating side chains. It's just that the communication between them will be delayed. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And the CPU thing, actually, I have the CPU emergency team coming on the podcast. They're going to talk all about those CPU issues, and that's really interesting dynamics. So I'm excited for that. I actually got to start to understand that finally lately. So yeah, that's cool. And speaking of the kind of the inner blockchain communication being on the back burner, they've got what Block One's working on right now, which is something interesting that came out of the Telegram channel. Is it looks like the wallet is really close, and that's going to be the next thing released. And then so that they're working on polishing that and getting it out to people. So there's some really cool stuff that everyone's been waiting for that should be releasing soon. So yeah, it's not that they're not working on stuff. It's just that they have a lot on their plate. So
yeah, they got London just maintaining the network, making updating all the security fixes, the patches. That itself is like a job. It's not like the EOS network. So just maintaining that itself is a job. Along with that, they have to bring up all these new upgrades and features, which is
yeah, exactly.
And then another thing about that is like they have to test it out properly. It's not like back in the day when they had like Dawn version 1.0 and then 2.0 could be rewritten completely. Now going forward, every change has to be tested so well so that it's backwards compatible and it doesn't break the chain in any way. So these all add levels of complexity to it.
Yeah, huge project. What as we start to wrap up the show here, what other things are going on in the chain that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, so I think Rex is going to be something interesting. So that will change the model of CPU that we have at the moment. And I'm hoping that people will get more used into buying into Rex. And then that'll also give an incentive for voters to get some sort of revenue some sort of payment from the system. So I'm hoping that would fix a CPU problem temporarily and until we have IBC, and it'll also help with the voting where currently we have around 25% of the network is voting, and that's the amount of EOS that's being voting at the moment. So we're hoping to get that up. So I would like to see something like 40% vote. And the thing is, we have close to 50% of the EOS that is staked and ready to vote, but only half of that actually votes. So it's good to see. I mean, it's quite easy to get the number up to 50%. Just get everybody who is staked to vote, and we'll have 50% of the voting. So it'll be good to see that numbers get higher.
Yeah, and the dynamic for people who don't understand why people aren't voting necessarily is because there's an opportunity cost of voting right now, which is so if I have, say I have 100 EOS and I could take that to Shintai and I could lease it out and then I can make a return on it. A lot of people are taking that route, or you can take it and you can stake it, then you're not making a return on it, but you're able to vote. And then but on this end, then you can get airdrops and things like that. So it's kind of, there's these opportunity costs that people weigh as to what they're going to do with their EOS. And Rex will take some of those decisions out of there, because I think with Rex, we should be able to vote, receive airdrops, and lease out the EOS all on the same platform. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, perfect. The airdrops are not straightforward, but yeah, it's theoretically possible. So exactly what you said. Airdrops not straight. Yeah, it's totally possible.
Okay, so airdrops maybe not right in the beginning then. Okay.
Yeah, and not exactly, because what happens is when you lease out your tokens on Rex, it's not accounted for totally. So but then whichever company or entity doing the airdrop, they will have to measure how much EOS you actually have in Rex, and then they have to calculate and airdrop it accordingly.
Okay, so that would be on the company's end that's airdropping. They'd have to add something in where they're calculating the Rex transactions also.
Exactly. So it's totally possible, but they'll have to calculate it exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, any final thoughts for the listeners, and where can people find EOS Authority? What are some calls to action to people who are listening?
Yeah, great. So EOS Authority, we are EOS Authority on Telegram, on Twitter, on YouTube, and all that. So one call to action is, so we have a lot of people using our alert bot. So what it essentially helps users do is, a moment there is a transaction on an account that they own or they want to watch, they have an email or a Telegram message. So we have had a lot of people thank us for this, because somebody had like, oh, I lost my active key, or somebody stole my active key or whatever, and then they unstake their EOS, and they have this 3-day window where they could use their owner key and retrieve their funds, or like stop their funds from being stolen. So just very simple. If you go into eosauthority.com/alerts, users will be able to just enter their account name, decide if they want an email or a Telegram notification. They'll get a message within like 1 second of an action happening on their account. And that's really useful to secure your account and know exactly what's happening. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's actually a huge tool for anyone not using that yet. Go start using it now, because that's one of my favorite alerts that I get is from your team. And even when it's just my own transaction, I see it come through. It's just comforting to know, okay, like at least there's some sort of like, feels like some sort of safety valve. It just is, it's very comforting. So thank you guys for building that. And anyone who is not using that tool, it's really easy to sign up for, and it's totally worth it. So and you mentioned the owner key and the active key, just to touch on that, because the security stuff's important. There's a way, some people do it, some people don't, to set up a different owner key from your active key, to basically set up 2 keys. That's an important security measure, because basically your owner key has more authority than your active key. I think your owner key allows you to change your password. So if someone gets your owner key, they can change your password and steal your account. So you want to be using the active key. For anyone out there who has set up owner key and active key as the same key, is there a way to change that? Can people update that and
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just take your if you just go to eosauthority.com/wallet, you can just use scatter, create a new EOS private key pair, you have a new key, and then just update your owner key, and that's it. So it's always recommended, just like what you said, to have a separate active key and a separate owner key, and that's the best way to go forward.
And yeah, so it's a pretty simple transaction, or pretty simple mechanism, or process. You go to scatter, generate a new key, go change just your owner key to something new and fresh, so you have a different owner and active key, and then we're all staying safe out here in the wild west of cryptocurrency, and get to keep enjoying the beautiful EOS ecosystem without getting knocked down.
Exactly. So. And then use your active key on wallets. If ever there's a compromise, you get a notification from our system, and you have 3 days to change your active key with your owner key, and that's it. Your funds should be safe. Wonderful.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Roshan. I really appreciate it. Great insights. I think people are going to be. We learned a lot here, so I'm happy about it. Generally, when I feel like I learned something, people listening feel like they learned something. So thank you for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us. Thank you.
Yep. Cheers. Until next time, my EOS friends. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Money is not the prime asset in life. Time is, and your time is.